Hello and welcome to the second video in our series on trauma-informed practices. We want to thank Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin for sponsoring the creation of these videos. In this video, we will apply trauma-informed principles to food security work and discuss ways to build supportive and nourishing environments for neighbors. I'll be showing you lots of examples of best practices for applying a trauma-informed lens to food distribution sites. At the end of this video, I invite you to complete the corresponding discussion guide, which will allow you an opportunity to dive deeper into some of these concepts and practice applying a trauma-informed lens to your own site. When taking a trauma-informed approach to food distribution work, we like to start by first asking these three guiding questions. First, does our approach to nutrition security reduce stigma, shame, confusion, and tension? Second, do our programs promote confidence, dignity, and even joy? And third, does our approach inspire compassion, understanding, and connection? Now that we know the effects that prolonged stress and adversity have on our physical and mental health, these questions can provide a guide for creating a healing and resilience-building space for ourselves, our staff and volunteers, and our neighbors. But when diving into creating spaces that support our neighbors, we should apply both trauma-informed principles and some trauma-informed best practices. Trauma-informed principles were originally developed by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, through collaboration with researchers, practitioners, and community members. These principles have since been expanded upon by those in the field. When we look at our spaces through principles like safety, trust and transparency, collaboration and mutuality, and voice and choice, and also with tools like reframing and attunement, we begin to see how our organizations provide buffering and support for our community, our volunteers, our staff, and ourselves. Our goal is for neighbors to be seen, heard, and know that they matter. So let's begin with a couple of foundational principles: safety, trust, and transparency. Safety is a basic human need, and in our distribution spaces, we can consider how to provide not only physical safety to our neighbors, staff, and volunteers, through safe environments and bodily safety, but also psychological safety, through our interpersonal interactions and creating a culture of well-being. But as important as providing safety is creating a sense of trust and transparency in our spaces. This might look like having well-trained and supported volunteers and staff, providing relevant, reliable services, and ensuring expectations and processes are predictable and clear. Remember, trust is learned and earned over time. In food programs, this might look like creating a welcoming and inclusive environment through consideration of accessibility, inclusive policies and images, and a clean, organized space. A welcoming space also includes a place where neighbors are greeted in languages they understand, so recruiting volunteers from the communities where neighbors live may help with this, along with signage in languages that your neighbors speak. Additionally, you can consider providing consistency, be that through regular hours of operation, staff and volunteers filling the same roles regularly, or striving to provide a consistent amount of food for patrons. And finally, incorporating more transparency in policies and procedures for staff, volunteers, and neighbors. Let's take a look at more examples of how to incorporate safety, trust, and transparency into distribution spaces. A great place to start is in the physical environment of your space. Whether you have a pop-up, pre-packaged, hybrid, or a neighbor choice model, there are plenty of opportunities to make neighbors feel welcome in your space. In a pop-up distribution, many of those same aims can be achieved through A-frame signs, tablecloths, and creativity. As you can see in the photo on the left, an A-frame sign can be used to alert neighbors to what items are available that day, and in this case, what type of specialty items are in stock as well. Advertising the availability of cook versus no-cook bags, hygiene products, and pet food in advance helps neighbors know what to expect and what to ask for. As sociologist Brené Brown says, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind." Sometimes neighbors queue up long before the start of a distribution, in which case you might want to consider the waiting process. Is there a chance to offer seating, shade, water, or even snacks? And finally, it doesn't have to break the bank to add a little color and warmth to your distribution. See that palette on the screen? That was a freebie from the food bank that a creative volunteer jazzed up with some chalk. Building trust and promoting transparency means thinking about what policies are in place and how you communicate those to the community at large. Remember, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Well, that's a good philosophy to have when it comes to signage, check-in process, and distribution hours and rules. When it comes to policies, remember to make sure they're documented and communicated. If you can't answer why a policy is in place, it might be a good one to revisit with other staff or volunteers. Consideration for language and literacy levels is also important. Keep language concise, use images when you can, and try to translate into all the languages spoken in your community. Let's pause for a moment. And I do mean literally pause. Go ahead and stop this video and consider what are some ways your organization or distribution embodies the principles of safety, trust, and transparency at your site. After you've jotted down some thoughts on paper, go ahead and press play to continue on. Let's look at two more important concepts. First, collaboration and mutuality. We want to recognize that people are the experts of their own lives. Build partnerships with coworkers, colleagues, and neighbors, and level power differences between staff, volunteers, and neighbors. And remember that health and well-being require quality relationships and meaningful power sharing and decision making. The other concept we'll dive into is offering voice and choice. We want to recognize all people as wise, creative, and resourceful. To support everyone's dignity and ability to shape their own lives by emphasizing strengths, autonomy, and self-advocacy, and incorporate individual and community voices into our distributions. Now, what exactly does this look like within a food program? Allowing for item choice comes to mind. This doesn't mean that your distribution needs to be a shop-style model. If you can make that change, great. However, there are many small changes that can be made in any type of distribution to allow for more choice. Additionally, consider opportunities for shared decision-making about what types of partner information and resources you bring on site. Is there an opportunity to ask your neighbors how and what type of information they would like to receive? Which leads me to our final point, asking for feedback from the community and being transparent when a request just can't be met. When we consider incorporating more choice into a distribution, there are many easy methods to regulate item amount while still allowing for choice. Sure, some sites are able to go completely neighbor choice, which is great, but if that isn't an option for you, you can consider modifications like a menu system, assigning a points value to food items, pre-bagging some items while having others be self-selected, or even something like a swap table or exchange box, where neighbors can leave an item that they receive that they know they don't want to take home and grab an item that someone else left. Any change you can make, whether big or small, goes a big way towards giving neighbors choice, autonomy, and agency. Another important way to allow for voice and choice is by considering the dietary and cultural needs of your population. Could you create a system for identifying needs like low sugar, low sodium, halal, kosher, gluten-free, vegan, or vegetarian, and then letting neighbors who have those needs know how they can access those items? Shelf signage and creating a space for special dietary items can help neighbors access the foods they want and need. The same considerations can be made for culturally relevant food items. Many pantries choose to make purchasing and sourcing dietary or culturally relevant items a priority. Another great tool for allowing neighbors to voice their opinions in your space is considering how and when you collect feedback from your community. Giving your neighbors an opportunity to share their likes, dislikes, and needs through a survey, comment box, or by using a sticker or jar voting method can help you identify how to make the most impact and where to focus your attention. For example, if you want to offer neighbors a warm referral to other community providers, why not use a sticker voting board to have neighbors select what services they would like to learn more about? If you have funds that you'd like to use to purchase more culturally relevant food items, you can survey neighbors to learn what items they would most like to have. Collecting feedback, whether informally or formally, is a great tool, But make sure you close the feedback loop by letting the community know what changes are or aren't possible and sharing results when able. Your partners at Second Harvest have some suggested feedback methods that are embedded in their own preferred practices. These include ensuring that guests do not feel required to provide feedback in order to access resources. Consider accessibility by providing opportunities for feedback in multiple ways, things like languages other than English or reading questions out loud. Co-create feedback questions or ask for open-ended feedback when possible. Ask for actionable feedback and share how it will be used. This is a key aspect of closing that feedback loop. Respect neighbors' time and the privacy of their data by keeping feedback anonymous and confidential. If you're using a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini to help analyze your feedback data, make sure to remove any personal information from the results first. Finally, Second Harvest has a community voice team dedicated to ethical and respectful engagement with people experiencing hunger to inform our work. Opportunities are available for support and collaboration, so please feel free to reach out if this is something that you would like to explore. Let's take another pause now and consider what are some ways that your organization embodies the principles of collaboration and mutuality, or voice and choice within your distributions. Alongside the external changes we can make to support a dignified and supportive environment for neighbors, we can make internal changes to contribute to a more compassionate and connected distribution space. One thing we know is that dysregulated people are going to have a harder time helping others. Think about when you fly in an airplane. The flight attendant always says that if we lose cabin pressure, we should put on our own oxygen masks before helping anyone else. We create safety and earn trust by simply showing up well-regulated and attuned. Attunement is being aware and responsive to the emotional state of ourselves and others around us. Regulation refers to the ability to maintain some balance and a sense of control over our emotions and behaviors. Remember learning about the window of tolerance in our last video? Attuned and well-regulated people are generally operating within their window of tolerance. And why is attunement and regulation important? Well, when we're regulated and attuned, we're better able to help others establish relationships and contribute to strong, healthy communities. Self-attunement is the act of identifying where you are on the scale of your physical and emotional state. It enables you to recognize your feelings and reactions, which in turn helps you respond more effectively to yourself and others in challenging situations. Self-attunement and awareness can begin by simply checking in with yourself and asking questions like, how am I feeling in my body? What thoughts are in my head? Do I feel present? What is my current emotional state? Self-attunement goes hand in hand with mindfulness and implicit bias. Implicit bias is an unconscious attitude or perception, often negative, about a person or group of people. Our brains constantly and automatically want to categorize people and associate them with specific qualities. This is a part of being human. However, mindfulness, which is a tool for attunement, can help disrupt that knee-jerk reaction. Mindfulness helps make the invisible visible. It is a powerful and essential tool for developing the self-awareness and cultural humility needed to address our biases and blind spots. This is why mindfulness is such an important practice of attunement. It allows us to develop awareness about what we're bringing into a space or interaction so we can practice attunement with others. Mindfulness helps us become less reactive and more responsive. The practice can also help us be less judgmental of ourselves and others. Consider taking the implicit bias test that is linked in the discussion guide for this video. One other tool for combating implicit bias is practicing cultural humility. Cultural humility is the art of being open to learning about other cultures and being respectful of others' beliefs and values. It requires self-reflection, curiosity, openness, letting go of assumptions, asking, and listening. When we practice cultural humility, we start with an examination of our own beliefs and cultural identities, and by recognizing power dynamics and imbalances. Our curiosity and compassion allow us to approach others with a humble curiosity, while letting go of any assumptions we may have about them. Another tool for challenging our assumptions in any given situation is called reframing. Reframing helps us use our understanding of trauma and adversity to understand difficult behaviors more compassionately. With human behaviors and being within a system run by humans, what we see is often just the tip of the iceberg, a reaction to a situation. What influences that reaction or behavior is all the stuff we don't see, things like past experiences, immediate circumstances, values, and so on. To reframe something, we approach a situation and examine actions and behaviors from a different perspective. Reframing is a great trauma-informed approach to adopt in your food programs, and the best part is all it takes is a mindset adjustment. When we reframe, the first step of the process is to pause. Take a moment to consciously halt judgments and assumptions that might automatically come to mind. The next step is to get curious about what assumptions and perhaps biases you may be bringing to your work. The final step is to try to see what may be another explanation for the behavior that you're seeing. What else could be happening in this situation? Ultimately, reframing encourages us to approach our own thought processes and others with curiosity and compassion as a first response instead of judgment or shame. With this in mind, could we reframe this slide? Maybe instead of identifying challenging behaviors, we could say that what we are seeing are normal human reactions to challenging situations. In food programming, reframing can help us rethink how we approach some neighbor behaviors. Food hoarding, or neighbors who we may perceive to take too much home with them, or receive food from multiple agencies at one time. What about neighbors who show aggression while waiting in line? Or the neighbor who routinely selects food we might deem unhealthy instead of fresh produce? How about the neighbor who expresses frustration over the items they received? Or what about someone we believe generally has a bad attitude? So how might we reframe these behaviors? Knowing what we do about toxic stress and adversity, and how that impacts us mentally and physically, what else could be going on with someone who is perceived to be taking too much food, or acting short during check-in, or while waiting in a food distribution line? I invite you to pause the video here and try to reframe any and all of these situations. Well, perhaps the neighbor who is perceived to be taking too much food is seeking protection and safety in a world that doesn't feel very safe and secure. Someone who appears nervous, agitated, or anxious might be outside of their window of tolerance. Selecting processed foods over fresh fruits and vegetables is the safer choice. While fruits and vegetables change in texture and flavor, heavily processed foods are designed to always taste the same. Maybe someone who is perceived to be having a bad attitude is looking for an opportunity to assert their autonomy in a system where they don't always get a choice. Remember that our neighbors are the experts of their own lives, and we are not expected to know every intricacy of their situation. But if we take a step back and consider the current circumstance with curiosity, then we may be able to better understand and connect with the communities that we support. So, in review, we can incorporate trauma-informed principles into our spaces through changes to our environments and distributions, and with internal shifts. Attunement is the practice of becoming more aware of your feelings and needs. And reframing, a method used to change the way we approach a situation and examine actions from a trauma-informed perspective, helps us to approach situations through a new lens. Thanks so much for watching.